Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Maine Pageant Place. Today we have the honor of sitting down with Isabelle St.Cyr. Isabelle, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I know we have a lot to talk about today, and typically we love to just start learning about a little bit of the early life of what that looked like for you before we jump into the beautiful pageant worlds.
Absolutely. I grew up here in Maine in a super small town. It's called Howland. Most people haven't heard of it. I grew up there and lived kind of the traditional country lifestyle, going to a really small school, four-wheeling, hunting, all of that. So it was quite the contrast to eventually get into pageants, but I've always had a love of beauty and for the finer things in life, if you will. So I was really excited to be able to explore that along with still loving who I am and the things that I learned in my small hometown.
Absolutely. I mean, small town Maine, it's so different than the rest of the world. I feel like you don't really know unless you're around to get an insight into what that's like.
Absolutely. And there wasn't much representation of pageants growing up. There were kind of this small country, like Little Miss pageants that I used to always watch. And I think that's when I really fell in love with it. So I've definitely had pageants in my eye since I was a little kid. And I've always had an eye for beauty and an eye for fashion, watching it on the television. And growing up, I was a cheerleader. I cheered all 4 years of my high school career and also was an all-star cheerleader. So I was no stranger to the stage. And I love to dance and I love to cheer. I love to get glam and be on stage.
I love that. So yeah, you're definitely familiar with being okay with being that center of attention and being a focal point. So tell me a little bit about when you finally decided to kind of dip your toes into pageantry. What did that start look like for you?
I have been thinking about doing pageants for many years now. I'd say probably 4 years ago is when I started thinking about wanting to do pageants, but I don't think I was as comfortable with myself to be able to represent myself well and confidently on stage. So I decided to do it this last year because I finally felt comfortable. I finally felt beautiful enough. And although I know I was always beautiful enough to compete, it has to come from within. So I finally felt comfortable enough to do this. And I felt like it was my time in life. So that's why I decided to chase it now.
For a lot of us, like newbies in pageantries, or when you're kind of looking at your first attempt at a stage, what was it like for you doing that research and finding a place where you felt you could navigate and be as comfortable as possible within this new industry for yourself?
Yeah, I have been watching the USA systems for quite some time, so I felt like I knew what I was getting myself into, but I guess you never really know as the viewer until you're backstage, getting ready and going on stage. So I definitely loved the experience and I will be coming back every year. It was very different than what I had originally thought was going to go down and how it was going to happen, but I think I ended up loving it even more than I thought I was going to. So I was really, really happy to finally be a part of it because as a viewer, sometimes you think you know what it's like and then you go into it and it's a whole different ball game.
Absolutely. I think that for me is one of the hardest parts to explain to other people is like we all kind of have our preconceived notions of what we think pageantry is. And I kind of did before I did my first one at 30. And then I went, oh, wait, hey, this is totally different than what I thought. So I really love that you threw your hat in the ring. And then I feel like it always speaks volumes when the delegate's like, I'm going back. So I'm glad that they were able to highlight you in a way that you felt safe and secure and able to navigate. And I know that I've been kind of following you throughout your pageant journey, and I was really fortunate to be there and to watch you. And I'm curious, what was it like for you leading up? Because I think we all focus on pageant weekend, but what did that kind of build up look like for you? How did you work on those strategies and steps to prepare for the stage?
I had signed up for the pageant back in November, so quite a while before the pageant had actually happened, and I was kind of in a different headspace, and I didn't even know that going into it, this was going to be as big of a deal. I didn't know that I was going to be the first transgender woman to compete. Since the rule had been changed since 2012, I figured that maybe there had been one before, and then I learned that I was going to be the first, and that's when my whole trajectory changed, and there was a new spotlight put on me that I am so thankful for, but going into it, I don't think I thought that that's what was going to happen. And being in the eyes of media and in the eyes of these news outlets, it was very hard to learn very quickly. So I had to learn very quickly how to represent myself. I was representing not only transgender women, but women in pageantry, and it was my first time. So I had to represent pageantry to a very, very large audience when it was my first pageant. So I hope I did a good job doing that, and I hope that I represented what pageants were, but it was my first time. And I think that, I mean, I was an early preparer. So by December, I already had my gown. I was already ready to go. I like had everything. So in the months leading up, I was very focused on media and my image and the story and platform that I wanted to share with the state of Maine.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't realize that they had changed their rulings in the 2012. I thought this was very recent, which is why you were the first. I thought you saw the opportunity and said, okay, I'll do this. So I think it speaks even more volumes that you're like, well, I don't know where I fall in the Rolodex, but I'm going to step up and I'm going to represent Maine. And I think something else you said that really drives home that I think people can often miss about people when they fixate on one facet is that you weren't just doing this for trans women, you were doing this for women. And that just stands out to me as who you are at the baseline is you don't depict people for one or two things, you see them as humans. And I really appreciate that and the point of view you have and the way you look at this. And I think it's easy for people to single us out in life for whatever they need to put us in their box. And I don't feel that with you. You're all encompassing, which is a wonderful thing to see from a pageant queen and is what we really need on those stages.
Thank you so much. I think that a lot of times people think that maybe I was doing it so that I could be the first transgender woman, and that was part of the reason that I was doing pageants, but it was always pageants first. I've always wanted to do pageants. I've always wanted to be a model, and I just was never going to let being transgender hold me back from achieving those goals. So I think what I've tried to share with the media and with everyone was that I love pageantry and I love modeling, and that has always come first. And I'm very happy to be the representation for trans women in this state and across the nation. But more importantly, I'm happy to be the representation for women because I think if you look at my story, you can get inspiration, even if you're not transgender, even if you are someone that was just a little different and trying to get into pageantry and modeling and in the eye of beauty. I think that you can find inspiration in other people's stories, even if you are not exactly the same as that person.
Absolutely well said. And as a bystander watching your journey, that's how I really felt about you was watching you own who you are so authentically in a world that really shuns that wants people to conform and fit their narration and their needs. And that's why I just saw such value in who you are and what you're bringing to the table because we need people that live authentically because it's so hard for people. And I guarantee you half the people in that crowd couldn't do what you did if their life depended on it. They couldn't be their authentic self. And that's the visionary in you. You have that ability to say, I have way more to offer. I'm not just one thing. So I just want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being that representation that I was cheering so loud for you. And I'm so grateful to be able to see your journey and so grateful to watch it continue.
Thank you so much. It was a big decision because obviously I could have gone in here and not disclosed that I was transgender. I could have not done any of the media and I could have just kind of flew under the radar. And honestly, when I signed up for the pageant, that was what I was going to do. I wasn't going to tell many people about it. I was going to try to keep it hush hush so that I could just do what I always dreamed of doing, which was competing in pageants. But as time went on and the climate in our country changed and I was hearing more stories of other trans people that were really in need, I felt that it was part of my duty to come forward and be open and honest with everyone and tell people that I was transgender and that I was going to be the first and that I was happy to be this representation. But that was something that wasn't immediate upon signing up and kind of came months later when I felt the calling to represent for people in the state.
So something I love to ask the pageant queenies here is how do you lead authentically in a world that really prefers conformity?
I think that authenticity has always been a tool of survival that I've had. I don't think that I've ever had the choice to be unauthentic because I have been so clearly who I was from a very young age. So I was thrown into authenticity very young, and I had to continue to live that life as a tool of survival and to continue for my own mental health to be honest and upfront with people about who I was. And now, with the eye of the media and everything, I have opened up parts of my life to the world that were very private before. And I just think that that is a part of being authentic. And I think that there's a lot of different parts of me that I love sharing about. Sorry. I think there's a lot of different parts of me that I love sharing with people. I obviously was the first transgender woman to compete, but I also own a farm in Monson, and I have a lot of different parts of my life that I love to share with people, and I love to show people the duality of our personalities. And just because you're a pageant girl doesn't mean that you can't have a farm or love country things, or just because you're transgender doesn't mean that you can't achieve everything that you want to achieve in life.
Absolutely. That's wise words for others. So, has there been anything throughout this experience that's just left you completely surprised or shocked?
The thing that was most surprising to me was how immediate it was that I got signed with the modeling agency Port City Models, and how I'm already going to be doing the runway The Flowers That Feed this weekend. I think that that came as a real shock because it was a part of my goal in pageantry to become a model. So for it to happen so quickly, to start building my portfolio and start chasing this dream, was very shocking, and it was a surprise, and I'm so extremely grateful for it.
Well, I think that this is kind of like one of those important underpinnings for people to understand that even when people don't win a title, they still win. There are so many different avenues in which you're highlighted when you take these opportunities to put yourself on at such a big, and in your case, a national stage. So I'm not surprised that you got signed, because to me, it's people are looking for that authenticity, and that is who you are. You can't hide from that. And so that's very attractive quality to people. And I'm really excited to see you walk this weekend at the Flowers That Feed show, and I can't wait to see what you do with Port City Models now, because I think in reality they've been waiting for somebody like you, and now they're able to partner with somebody that they feel great about, that they want to highlight, that's well spoken, that can be a champion for so many. So congratulations on landing that. I think that's going to be an amazing opportunity for you, and we'll definitely keep the Maine Pageant family in the loop about what you're up to and where you're going next, and who knows what catwalk you're going to land on next.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely agree with what you said. It's not only the winner who wins in a pageant. I felt like I won when I made it to semifinals. That was my goal going into it. It was my first pageant, and my major goal was to make it to semifinals. So the fact that I was top 10, the fact that I was semifinals, the fact that it was such a close race between the top 5 and the top 10 and who was going to make it was my goal, and I felt like I had won in that moment. I'm not sure if you saw on stage when they called my name, I was trying not to cry on stage just because I was so happy and grateful, and it was everything I expected and more. And in that moment on the second day, as the pageant weekend is winding down and we're getting to those last finalists, it just became so real, and I was just so grateful that that happened and that I was able to achieve being in the top 10 at my first pageant.
Absolutely. And I think that's what really makes a good queen, is somebody that understands the journey. You know, I think everybody gets into pageantry for their own unique reasons, but I think we've probably each seen in even our small pageantry careers of how people can take it as such a negative after pageant weekend. And for me, just like you said, the win is like really signing up, and then the win is showing up. And people don't realize there's so much pre-work that leads up to this. So I can't wait to see what you continue on with and how you approach it next year with a little bit of experience now. So I'm just really excited to keep people highlighted on that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think if I would have won, I obviously would have been elated, but I probably would have been a little sad that I couldn't compete again next year because I love the process. I love being there. I love the sisterhood. I love being on stage. So I'm so glad that I get to do it again next year.
I have to say, when my friends and I walked into the ballroom, I mean, our mouths were just agape. It was so gorgeous in there, and it looked like one of the most regal stages and productions of a pageant I had ever seen. So I knew right then, I was like, oh, I'm impressed, just as an outsider. And I think you've helped inspire several of us to be like, hey, maybe this system might fit who we are. It might be able to fit the more unique beings that maybe are searching for that pageant home.
Absolutely. I hope I can encourage more women to sign up for Miss Maine USA. I want more. I want more sisters. I want more queens. I want more competitors. I want it all. So I'm so happy that I've been able to inspire some people, and hopefully this has put enough of a light on the USA system here in Maine that we have an even larger outcome next year with more people competing. I hope that it maybe has given some national attention to this system, and maybe next year we'll have more girls competing.
So word on the street is that you might be a cover girl for a magazine soon. Is this true?
Yes, so there is a magazine in Boston that asked me to be on the cover of the July edition, which I thought was perfect because July is my birthday. And I'm super, super excited. They're doing a full profile on me. They've been working on it since the day after the pageant. So I'm going to be on the cover. I'm going to announce the exact magazine that it's going to be soon, but I will say that it's based out of Boston and it's really huge. It is an LGBT magazine and it focuses on doing profiles on up and coming role models and trailblazers in the community. So when they reached out to me and asked me to be on the cover, I mean, my jaw was on the floor. I was so happy they were even asking me to do a story. But for me to be on the cover of my photo, it still feels so unreal. And I don't think it'll feel real until I have the magazine in my hands.
Yeah, I mean, what a blessing again that you're only going to continue to open doors the more you lead authentically.
Absolutely.
So with receiving a lot of press and articles, and I think even at the pageant, there was like 188 press in the room. I had never seen so much news coverage of something. What has that experience been like for you?
It's been very up and down going into it. I hadn't had a lot of experience with the media before, and I was expecting it to be a lot of positivity, but as I learned very quickly, the thing that gets clicks is negative articles, negative headlines. So I would say a lot of the media attention has been negative and has tried to put a negative spin on what I'm doing or my goals. A lot of them thought that, I was just doing this to be the first and to make headlines. And I think that people love to click on something that is clickbaity and kind of negative. So it's been really hard. The media is not always very upfront with who they are or what they're going to do. So it's hard, and you have to do a lot of research about not only the organization that they're with, but who the reporter is and the stories that they've done in the past. I had some very fantastic ones. I made international news. I made news in Sweden and had a pair of very nice reporters come by my farm and do a full profile on me and my farm here in Maine, and I was very happy for that. So I have a lot of Swedish fans out there that love me, which I thought was quite random, but I absolutely loved that. And coming up, I have a very fantastic interview coming out with Radio Canada. It's going to be in French because it's in Quebec, but that one will be very positive. But there were a lot of negative ones, and sometimes when you see a news company that usually writes very negative articles or a lot of conspiracy theories reach out and you tell them no, that you're not going to comment, a lot of times they retaliate by making a really, really bad article about you. So there was a couple that I had said, like, I'm all set commenting, like, I've read the articles that you've written and I don't want to be affiliated. And then they retaliate by trying to make a big issue. And the press was a lot because I wasn't the only person getting press in the room, because we did have another very high profile person competing. And I think a lot of the news wanted to pin us against each other. Me and her had never met. So a lot of it was fabricated. A lot of it, they didn't ask me for comment, or if they did, I declined. So a lot of it really had nothing to do with me personally. And I would get a lot of messages and calls from family and friends saying, did you see this? Did you see that? And I really didn't usually look. I haven't read any of the comments. I don't get into all that negativity. I stay positive, and I have learned to forgive people in the moment when they do or say bad things about you. So when I see something pop up on my timeline that's about me, I learn to forgive and move on as quickly as I can, because if I sat here with all the negative things that not only people were saying about me, but about trans people in general, I would probably be very sad. So I continue to be positive. I continue to move on. And I think being positive in the light of negativity can change people's minds on you. So hopefully some of these people that have not so fond opinions on trans women or trans women competing in pageants will see my positivity and see my dedication and my love for pageantry, and maybe their minds will be changed at the end of the day.
Do you want to talk about your farm at all?
Of course.
Do you want to
yeah.
give a little shout out about what that other side of your life looks like? Because I think a lot of us don't know. So.
Yeah. I own a farm full time, and that's what I do. That's what I love. I love animals. I love taking care of animals. And I love sustainable farming and taking care of the world that we live on. And originally, going into the pageant, that was going to be my platform. My platform was going to be on sustainable farming and how we can better support these small town farms that are really keeping our small economies alive. But obviously, as time went on, I felt like it was more important for my platform to be for trans rights and the inclusion of trans people in pageantry. But originally, it was going to be about farming and sustainable farming because I do love farming so much. I love animals. I love taking care of animals. I love clean eating and clean food. So that was my main inspiration for starting a farm. I started it about 3 years ago, very small, and it's quickly grown. I have cows and pigs and all kinds of stuff now. And that was originally going to be my platform, was going to be sustainable farming and supporting local farms. But as time went on, political climate changed, and I felt that it was more important for me to be the voice of trans people because unfortunately in Maine, we don't have a lot of trans people speaking out due to just being scared of retaliation and what the media will say.
Absolutely. Well, I think what I have gathered from my small time getting to know you is that you're very methodical in what you do and you really care about the environment and the impact you have around you. And I just want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart of being that beacon of hope for so many people. And thank you so much for being so authentically you.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that.